Hey Gears, we're going to learn how to make a honeycomb infill pattern today. This is going to give us more control over the B-box design. It'll also help you better understand how to make a sandwich panel for fabrication, which will save us in materials, which will save us in cost, and hopefully won't cost us anything in terms of strength. So this is an example of what we're building toward. This is a honeycomb structure. It takes advantage of some of the things that we've already learned how to do, such as mirror and pattern, and it shouldn't take us too long to put together. So let's go ahead and make a new drawing. We'll call it honeycomb, call it anything you want. Call it infill 2, that's fine. Click OK. So the first thing we're going to do is put our orientation to front. We're going to use a new tool. So we're going to go into schools. We're going to make a sketch. And the new tool we're going to use is the palette. So if we click on sketch, go into more, go to the palette. The palette has all kinds of polygon shapes waiting for us to use. So, and we need the hexagon. We'll double click on that, put a hexagon in the drawing. So that's pretty good. I'm going to drag it to the center. Okay, I'm going to set the, let's go to the import selection. We'll set the size to 20. That's just a size that I've been using. It seems to work okay. We're going to accept it. So we've got our, I'm going to shift center click to reposition this. So this is our hexagon. And what I've discovered, and I experimented for a while coming up with this, making this a pattern that fills in worked easiest for me with 2 hexagons. And you know, there's multiple ways to do things, and sometimes it's your own spatial bias about how you think is the best way to get things done. In order to make an identical hexagon, I'm going to put a center line over here. You can probably guess that if I'm using a center line, I'm going to be mirroring something, which is absolutely correct. I'm going to mirror it about this line. So I've got 2 hexagons, and I'm just about done with the sketch. There's just one more thing that I need to know. I'm going to set up a pattern, and I'm going to translate this pattern here, 2 hexagons. I'm going to translate it down, and I'm going to translate it to the right. And I'm going to do them both at the same time to fill in the sheet. It'll go pretty quickly, but I need to know how far to translate it. So here we can see that this dimension is 20, and that's good to remember. We also need to know, well, how far across are, for example, these axes here, or these vertices here. So I went ahead and I can make that a reference, it's fine. I'm going to go back in a sketch, and I'm going to drag this out just a little bit. And my intention here, and it's important to remember, that I'm going to take this whole piece and shift it down, and then I'm going to shift it over. And we'll talk about why this works the way it does as we do our pattern. But it's important you should write down these numbers, whatever they are, for the hexagons that you've selected, because they're going to be integral to forming our patterns. So far so good. And we're going to go back into our sketch mode, and we're going to accept it. So the next step is going to be to extrude this. So I go back into schools, select extrude. Go into my extrude menu. I can make this anything I want. I'm going to just set it as 5. That works as good as anything else for the purposes right now. Oops, let's get bigger. No, that's fine for now. We'll just make it 25. We can take a look. Whoa, that's a big honeycomb. We can change it later if we want. So I've got my extrusion, and the reason that I'm not doing any number of other ways to approach this is that you can lose pieces when you try to extrude. So now I've got my extrusion, it's selected. Go back into schools, and I'm going to make a pattern. So I've got my shape. If I want to see it better, I can go back to my orientation, go back to the front. Now I'm going to go into my pattern, and in this case I am going to do a direction, and I'm going to go across, which is the front in this case. Is that coming toward me? Looks like it might be coming toward me. Let's do the. Well, let's just get started, and we'll see where we go from there. I go to my pattern, and I want these to not be 1.026 apart. I think we're going to want 34.64 apart. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. And we can see here that what we've done is we've kind of stacked the hexagons, which wasn't our intention. So I'm going to go back into the pattern. I'm going to change the definition. So I picked the wrong direction to rotate in. So instead of the front, let's pick the top and see if that's better. So we've got two, and let's see, oh, that looks a lot better. Okay. So what it's done right now is it's made a nice copy of this. And that looks pretty good. Let's go back into our pattern. And just to get a handle for what this looks like, we could make 4. And we can see now that our honeycomb is getting longer in this direction. So this original pattern was copied 4 times. And that's pretty cool. That works just fine. Let's go back into our definitions. The great thing about pattern is we can do it in more than one direction, which is what we want to do. So let's go ahead and select the top, and let's do this twice. And this distance, let's go ahead and set at 34.64 just to see what it does. And we can see that it really didn't do anything. Let's go back into our pattern so we can figure out why. We've got 2. See here where it's showing. What we want to see is, oh, they're going the same direction. So we want to go ahead and change that. Have them go. Let's see how that works. Oh, we made a stack again. So sometimes, and it's okay to just do a little trial and error to get things sorted out. Oh, that looks much better, doesn't it? So it was the right that we needed. And we can see here that, oh, those are not exactly the way we wanted them. Let's go back into our pattern. And they're not quite far enough apart in this dimension. Let's make them 60 apart. And that's perfect. And the reason I came up with 60 is that it is about 2.5 units across to start the next one. If each is 20, so you've got, or 3 units across rather, so you've got 60, 20, 20, and 20. And so I can go into this pattern now that I've got it established, and I could make it more if I wanted. I could make this 8, make this 8. Click OK. And now I've got a giant honeycomb pattern. And you can imagine that we could do a little bit of math to figure out what would it take to fill in a panel of any size with a structure like this. And that's in fact what we'll be thinking about as we move forward. So this is a honeycomb pattern that used mirroring and the palette tool. It's a new way to approach making some drawings. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a little tricky, it takes some time, but this is a good next step.